Welcome, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight?
Good.
Well, hi.
Good.
Hi.
So I have Miss Jackie Burbridge and Miss Brittany Claybrooks joining me tonight, and we are going to be talking about why more women of color should be running for office. Both of them are familiar with running for office, being on the front lines and what that entails. So we'd like to have that discussion tonight. I think is very important in these times, or even prior to now, but more so now. And we've seen that it's been a concerted effort across the country to get more women in office. And I couldn't think of any two women to talk to tonight besides the both of you. So welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with you, Miss Jackie. If you can talk to us a little bit about yourself, how you got into politics, so that our viewers can know a little bit about you, that would be great.
So I am a non-professional consultant and a non-professional nonprofit. I'm sorry, nonprofit professional by trade, and I've been in that area for more than 15 years now. And a lot of what I've done has been advocacy on part of the nonprofits that I've worked with. So I've always kind of had my ear to government and how government could be and should be working for people. And I most recently earlier this year, it's unbelievable really that it was still this year where I ran for county legislator. I wasn't successful in winning that seat, but it was my first campaign that I ran. And it was important to me to really just get out there and give voters in my district a choice, which I think they appreciated. So, I'm always a proponent for open, transparent government where there is the encouragement of the full constituents' participation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Brittany, talk to us a little bit about your background and how you really got started in politics.
Hi. So it's interesting. I've been in government my entire career. I started at the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice and then moved on to do some work on affordable care. And, I'm also an urban planner by trade. And so I have my master's in urban planning and development. And I've worked for municipal government for some time. I served as a district leader in my district here in the city of East Orange, New Jersey. And I most recently was elected as the here in East Orange, New Jersey. So that position in February, and and I actually believe the city council. Happy to be here, and this work has been interesting. My first time out in the middle of a pandemic, but it's been rewarding also.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to be here this evening. And if any of you, if you have another platform open on your desktop or laptop, you might want to shut that down, shut it off, because it's creating feedback. Okay. Yeah. So if you have like Facebook open or Instagram or whatever, just make sure that's not turned on. All right. Thank you so much. So let's dive right into it. So there's been, like I mentioned earlier, there's been a recent concerted effort to get more women of color in office. Why is that important that we really do that now? Yeah, Brittany, go ahead.
So I think it's always been important that we've had women of color in office. I think we saw it break through. We respect here and there, at the federal level and even at the state level. To me, it's always been an important thing. I think it's become more of a demand now because we've seen us carry our party and our respective communities for so long, right? And I think we're at a point in history and just in time where it shouldn't be a thought. It should almost be as natural to us as anything else in public service. It shouldn't even be, what kind of Black woman it is she credentialed enough and things like that, because we've proven time and time again, whether it be in election or in leadership, that it's our time, but it's our time always. right? So I don't know that it's a question of whether or not it's so important now. It's a matter of acknowledging how important it's always been, and it's more of a demand than it is an interest or an ask.
Right.
You know?
Right. Ms. Jackie, what do you have to add to that? Why do you think that it's been, like Brittany said, a higher demand now than it has been in the past?
Because I think people are really starting to be cognizant of the fact that there have been too many spaces for too long where that voice just hasn't been represented. When I live in Suffolk County on Long Island, and when I ran, the race I ran in, there's never been a Black woman on Suffolk County's legislative body. And
Wow.
so I was running to, hopefully be that first person. And as I was running and saying that to people that there'd never been, people were surprised, people were, like disappointed, I guess is a good word to hear that. And it's just there's always this, that perspective is unique, as is everyone's perspective. And as we fight for inclusivity, we should definitely be at the table making those decisions. We're so often heads of households and heads of businesses, and the space that I work in, I do a lot of racial justice and social equity work. And in that work, as a volunteer, all the time, the overwhelming majority of people that I see around me doing that work side by side are Black women. And so if we're on the ground getting that work done, we know what our community needs. We know what our families need, what our businesses need, what our children need in terms of their education. That's a valuable voice that needs to be heard. And I just think people are really becoming very much appreciative of the fact that for too long that voice has just been kind of sidelined.
Yeah. Yeah. So pretty much it's important that we have that representation of us, because if we're not at the table, they won't know what we want or what we need need in the community. And this might be
we have knowledge and insight to bring to the table as well.
Yeah.
And experience.
Exactly. And to anybody tuning in, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions for Ms. Brittany, if you have any questions for Ms. Jackie, please type it in the comment section so they can address those questions that you have. And my next question to you guys is, it might be a little bit broad, but being that you have ran for office or in office, what does this country demand from Black women when it comes to politics?
A lot. A lot. I think there's one thing to talk about what the country actually demands, and I think there's a difference between what they do demand and what the demand should be.
Right.
So there's, as we know, whenever you're the pioneer of something, or whenever you are in a minority status, like particularly for Black women, there are always these extra things put on top of us, on top of just doing the job.
Right.
Right. And I think the demand on us should do the same as you would any other person in office. As Jackie talked about, it's transparency, right? It's making sure you're doing the right thing. And I think for me, those are things that people should be demanding. I don't know that we carry the level of scrutiny when our counterparts or our colleagues or folks of other races and other genders run for office. And so the demand on us should be that, and be on other people. Then people should have the expectation that we do what we came there to do the same way we've always done in history. There's never been a time when, there's a saying that says, when the Black woman enters, she brings the entire race with her. Those are the things that, folks should expect from us, right? And then also share the same demands of us that they do of other people, with the expectation that we're going to deliver like we've delivered for so long. And I want to continue to put emphasis on how we've been here, right? The rest of the world is watching, but we've been here, and it's about time, right? We get the opportunity to even meet those demands.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think the flip side of that is that it's almost, the demand is almost unrealistic in terms of, we all know the saying of you have to be twice as good and work twice as hard to get halfway as far. And it just makes me think, can you imagine if a Donald Trump had been a black woman? Like, never would a black woman ascend to the highest level in office in the country with doing the things that he's done. I mean, a proven self-admitted sexual assault, and then all the other unproven claims against him in that area, tax evasion, mocking people who are developmentally disabled, all of these things that he has done, a black woman would never be able to rise. The scrutiny would be so intense, and the backlash would be so intense because we're expected to always be above reproach, to be without flaw. And it's unrealistic, it's unfair. But I think, as Brittany was saying, the expectation should be the same as it is of everyone else, that we should be honest, that we should do the work, that we should be transparent, instead of having these unrealistic goals. When people like to throw that old stereotype of the angry black woman, as if we don't have things to actually be angry about, as if injustice isn't something that people should be mad about, as if segregation and all of these things that have been legalized by this country for so long that have negatively impacted our communities aren't things that should anger you. We should be angry, and that should be a catalyst for change.
Right. And I think we are starting to see, and I totally agree, and I think we are starting to see that happen and play out in the news, where instead of focusing on the work that somebody's doing, it's about when we change our hair and
wear
lipstick and when we do certain things. And I think it's about time. If anything, the country is demanding, particularly in my generation, right? We're demanding that people come to the table as their authentic selves. No longer do we care for the very cookie cutter, box cutter person. And when you invite us to the table, we shouldn't come to the table with the little things about who we are, with them becoming these big deals instead of focusing on the policies that we're putting through, right? I couldn't imagine, being a congresswoman, as we've seen, and somebody's talking about, the type of makeup I have on or the color suit that I have on. And we've seen these things happen with women for so long. And it's like, no, I am who I am, and I want to be able to show up as my authentic self and not have to feel that pressure, so I can just focus on doing the work. And when you add being a black woman on top of that, there's that extra layer of, scrutiny that, for me particularly, and then you add age to it. In my case, there's those levels of scrutiny where you're like, well, wait a minute. I went to school and got all levels of my education. I've worked, I've done this work at the ground level, at the federal level, at the city level. Why are we talking about my hair?
Right.
Why are we talking about who I'm dating? Why are we talking about, the things that we wear? And I think Michelle Obama has brought those things up. So it is true that those demands are unfair, but the same way everybody else shows up and are able to do that, and we don't question them, particularly our white male counterparts, we can be able to enter this space and have the same freedom.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you guys think that America is ready for a woman president at all?
I think so.
I would love to be able to say yes, but the fact that they, people have their legitimate concerns about Hillary Clinton, but the fact that she lost to the person she lost to is just really discouraging. But the flip side of that also is that she did win the popular vote. More people did vote for her than they did him. So, I guess in that regard, the answer is yes, but we still couldn't manage to see it happen. I think now, with the most recent, the Democratic primary that we had so many accomplished women who were vying for that seat was very encouraging. It was very heartening to see. But then again, we ended up with what we have, a white man in his 70s, because I think the power structure that exists, the Democratic National Party didn't want to, they didn't want to go too far left with a progressive. They didn't want to back a woman. They wanted to stay with what they thought was safe, I guess, and tried and true. And I know a lot of people that are not happy about that decision. They really wanted to see. I myself was an Elizabeth Warren supporter, and I know a lot of other people wanted to see, something new and time to bring in some diversity. I think that there's a large part of this country that is ready, and there's still a large part that wants to hold on to the status quo.
Elizabeth Warren, she lost in her own home state. that to me was discouraging. Like I thought we were making some kind of progress, and then she came like maybe third or fourth in her own home state. That didn't make sense to me, you know.
It didn't make sense to me either. I mean, I thought her platform was really, really strong. You know, it really resonated with me. I don't know what the ground game was in her state in terms of why she wasn't able to carry her own state. I don't know. I mean, I was disappointed when she started to really perform
Yeah, yeah.
I
poorly, those first contests. But I thought she
the question that I have for my sisters is, do you believe though that this time was the time to throw us in that kind of fire, right? I always say that, this was this might just have been a white gentleman.
Say it again, Brittany.
I think I'm wondering if I struggled with this one at the very beginning, because I wondered if this was the time. It's always been our time, and I believe that. At the very beginning, before I settled on the fact that like this is our time, this is where we should be completely, I wondered if it was fair, right, to put us up in this type of fire, right? We've seen white men, repeatedly tear the country apart. And, we've seen our voting power, and we've seen, the power that we have. However, I always wondered at this point, was it fair to put our sisters up in that type of fire and in that type of light to fix, or, take on that burden that was created by some, men of a different hue. And I struggled with that at the very beginning. And I just wondered if this was the time to put us up in that type of climate, and I asked, and I've had this conversation, and quite a few other people felt the same way. But it is true that, look, we saw Hillary, and she was the most qualified, and we've seen people repeatedly come up with things, find things, right, about her to say. And I think she was the most qualified candidate, male or female, at the time that she came. And yet again, we saw them digging. And then you have a man who's white, who has done far worse, and we're crowning him president. I think that's just interesting. And while we may have the energy, and while we always turn out in support of, which is women have always done, I wonder, like, is America really ready? Right? Is that something that we see, right? When we see her lose in her own home. My thing was, do we want to continue to put our sisters up, or do we want to wait for a window of opportunity? And that's a question that doesn't necessarily deserve an answer right now, but it is certainly something to think about. And I think a lot of people are thinking about that.
Yeah, I personally, I don't think America is ready for a woman president. I don't think that the system, the way the system has been built up, the patriarchy system, a lot of women are not ready to give that up just yet. So a lot of white women, I want to say, are not ready to give that up.
Right.
So
we have to unlearn some things.
Huh?
We have to unlearn some things.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's absolutely right.
I don't know what it will take for us to get there, but for right now, the main target at hand is to get Trump out of office. So that should be our main focus right now. So, I mean, as Black women who have ran for office, when it comes to mobilizing votes, when it comes to getting people in the community out there to vote, what is the best way to go about this? And I know the question that I gave an example about, is it enough to tell people that, okay, somebody died for you to be able to have the right to vote? Is that enough for somebody to get out to vote? What can we really do besides that?
That's not enough. It's true. It's a very true statement, and it's something that resonates with me deeply, but it's not enough. People have way too much, particularly in Black and brown communities and communities of lower economic status. People just have way too much going on to feel like they have to now take up the mantle of work that was started some 50, 60 years ago. They just don't even have the opportunity to breathe, to really think about that. You know, people are holding down multiple jobs, they're raising kids, they're taking care of elderly parents at the same time. They're struggling to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. And I think that's really how you get them to get engaged, is to speak to those issues in a way that's really real and informed, and to be able to talk to them about, I see what your struggle is, I see what your day-to-day life is looking like, and these are the policies that I want to put forth in order to make that easier for you to accomplish whatever your ideal of success looks like. And on my campaign trail, I found that's what really resonated for me with potential voters, was that people were really tired of the status quo. They were tired of the same old, same old. They didn't think that what was happening in the past was working for them. And you could see where it's not working for them. If you've been a part of a class, a working class, or a class of constituency that's been neglected for too long, you realize that you're tired of it, but you also begin to feel like you don't have any power to change it or to control it. And so I think speaking to that, like speaking to people's power in this moment, that you do have an ability to actually have your voice heard. You do have the ability to cast a vote in your own best interest. And you have someone you can cast a vote for who understands what is needed by your community. I think that's how we, mobilize people, how we motivate people. But it's difficult. It's hard work, because this feeling of disenfranchisement is internalized and it's entrenched very, very deeply, because it's been, first of all, there's been strategic maneuvers meant to disenfranchise people, to suppress votes, to keep people from coming out to the polls. And then people vote and they don't feel like they're getting the return on their vote that they bargained for. People get into office and betray their campaign promises. So that feeling of my vote doesn't count, doesn't work, it's real. It's very real, and it's very much a valid sentiment. So there's a lot of work that has to happen from the structural systems and from people individually that really do kind of go back to, reinvesting the power into the vote of the people.
Yeah.
Right. I totally agree. When I ran, a big part of getting people out to vote was education. We see, it's funny that you mentioned where people feel this feeling of, my vote doesn't count and I'm not being heard. That is totally something that's out there. And I think that when we see this idea of somebody died for you to vote, it's that respectability politics that we see. And it's true, right? And you want to continue to remind people of the sacrifices that were made for them, because those are not invalid. However, the thing that I found to be the most effective is to speak to and find out and listen to what people really need. I think that we get in the habit of, when we campaign and when we run, we're trying to tell people what we're going to do as if we already know everything.
Right.
And that's where you get in the habit of, that's where you see things not being met. Or there are people who go out and they have all this hope, and that's where it's important for you to have done the work prior to running. I think people like the idea of what holding the office might look like, or they go in thinking that they themselves as a single being is going to fix everything. And that's not realistic. And so I think as candidates and people who are trying to get people to understand what it is we're doing, a part of the responsibility is on us to not only educate, but listen, right? The best people, the people who know best how to fix things are the people who are going to, be affected by what it is you're doing.
Right.
And the other part to that is getting out and getting on the ground, knocking on doors the old school way, educating people, and being transparent too. Because what we do is we want to go and we want to make sure that people are casting their ballot for us. But it's another thing to have that person educated about why you're doing what you're doing, when you get to office, the challenges that you may face, and while you're in office, talking to them every step of the way, not just at election time, not just when you need their vote or when you need something from them. This is a constant, ongoing thing. And then managing expectations, letting them know when you need their participation, letting them know when you want them to be at a community event, letting them know what their role is and empowering people to do their part of the work, right? I think we carry, when folks run for office, they carry this burden of, I'm going to fix everything. I have to do everything. And this is a long game, right? Walking into something sometimes that didn't happen when you got there, it didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to take overnight to fix. And so what we end up seeing is that lack of dedication long term, and it turns into frustration when you find out that everything's not going to happen.
That's right.
I think it should.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where your long term dedication has to come from, right? And so that it starts there, but then the other part of it is educating people at the door. It's not just, will you vote for me? This is what I'm going to do. It's taking surveys about the issues that people wanted to see like fixed. So we knew going in what the agenda would be. I knew what I had to deliver on day one getting in office because we had data and surveys, right? Shout out to our team who helped us take that data. We know that parking is an issue. We know that rental affordability is an issue. And so those are the things that we're working on. We're not trying to create something for the people. We ask them what they wanted, and we're trying to fix it for them. And that's what keeps people engaged and going out and continuing to vote, you know?
Yeah, so pretty much listening to what the people want and really help them get that, be that bridge,
right.
Bridge that gap really from the resources they need to, you guys as well. So, I mean, I know this wasn't part of what we're going to talk about, but since we're talking about voting, what is your take on the Supreme Court, what they passed on Monday about the electors mandating them to vote for the candidates that got the popular vote? Before it wasn't mandatory that they did that. Do you think is now the time for the Electoral College to be besides the way? Should we still be following that to begin with? What is your take on that? You can go ahead and
Brittany, say something. Oh, the Electoral College is, it's way past time to do away with it. It's such an antiquated system. It doesn't fit the needs of modern society. It's like I said earlier about Hillary Clinton having won the popular vote. If we know that there are more individuals in this country who want to see a particular person hold office, why are we going with some outdated, system that doesn't reflect the needs of the people? It's not that difficult. One person, one vote. This is really just straightforward, basic common sense to me. So, I would love to see the Electoral College go away. I understand that while it's still in place, that whatever the rules were that set it up, those rules are going to continue to be enforced. Those laws will be enforced because that's what it is. But it should be done away with.
Yeah, and in fact, times have changed from when the founding fathers came up with the Electoral College. A lot of things
have
changed since then. So
that's right.
It's time to, again, like you guys do when you go out to campaign, listen to what the people want. It's time to listen to what we want by going by the popular votes. Brittany, do you have anything to add to that? The Electoral College issue with the Supreme Court that they changed around on Monday?
I'm very rarely surprised at this point. I'm very rarely surprised at what, our good old system does. And I think that the electoral, it's true. It's outdated. It's time to go. Anytime you tell the people, hey, go out and vote, and then we do that and we show up and then we see elections time and time again when they're turned over. Because of that particular thing, it's disappointing.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's time. It's time for it to go.
Yeah. And I think what they passed on Monday will actually be in effect by November 3rd. So yeah. So yay to that. And again, everybody watching, I see we have a few people on board. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you taking time from your schedule this evening. If you have any questions, please type it in the comment section. Even if you want to say hey to the ladies that we have on today, type that in. We're glad to have you here. So let's move back to Biden. And since he started his campaign, he's been saying that he will elect a Black woman to the Supreme Court if he wins. And there's been a lot of rumors recently that his short list of women or of VPs has a lot of Black women in it. So I want us, and a lot of people have been saying, and we talked a little bit on this, that him picking a Black woman VP is more of a cosmetic pick than it is for credentials. Let's talk about that.
I think that is absolutely absurd. I think it's absurd and it's unfair.
Yeah.
It's extremely unfair. So I don't know any of the women that have been talked about on that short list that aren't producers to begin with.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right? So how many times have we picked? I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger was an actor. Like Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan was an actor. Mm-hmm.
Ronald Reagan was like, how many times have we seen Donald? Excuse me, 45. Hello. Right? How many times have we seen this happen? And we don't ask these same questions. We don't talk about this. But somehow, when it's a woman, one, and then you add Black women on top of that, well, what about her credentials? Is it because of her credentials? How many times are we not the rising, most educated population in the United States right now? Do we not? Are we not the largest numbers of business owners right now? Are we not rising in numbers? Are we not growing as lawyers? Are we not doing these things? And have we not been doing these things for so long?
Yeah.
And people say those kind of things, even when, I found it very surprising, on the campaign trail, even for me, where, people ask those kind of questions, and it's like, I don't know that I don't know if I could be here if the system has allowed for me to not be qualified in these years. Like,
matter of fact,
I don't have that luxury.
Right.
I don't have the luxury to
the privilege. And we don't have the privilege.
Right? Like, we don't have the luxury to be Black and woman and under 30 and run for office and not be qualified. We haven't
That's
got
right.
That's not a privilege that I inherited. I'm sorry.
Right.
So for every woman on there, each and every last one of them, they are beyond qualified. In fact, they're more qualified than a person who sits in the seat currently.
That's right.
Exactly.
And so the idea that we would be a cosmetic pick, again, is just one of those things to throw people off, because people just don't want to accept the fact that whether you want to recognize it or not, we're equal. And
they don't want us at the table.
I don't want to say better.
Yeah.
Right? We're better equipped.
Yeah.
Right? A part of doing this job is having grit and understanding how to persevere. That alone is a qualifier. And we've seen that time and time again in our businesses, on college campuses, in our homes, in our families, in our communities. Yeah. We've done that work at the very minimum. And then you add the fact that we have to be twice as educated, right? Yeah. And be on the job twice as long and work for less to pay. I think it's absolutely insulting when people say it's cosmetic over, whether or not we're qualified. But we haven't quite yet gotten the privilege of not being qualified. And so that's not even a legitimate concern, or it shouldn't be a concern of anybody.
Shouldn't be, but unfortunately, it is.
Right.
Yeah.
My concern is that I feel like recently he started to say that he never committed to a Black woman. He committed to a woman, but not necessarily a Black woman. And right? So I wanted to be a Black woman, and to second everything that Brittany said, they're all extraordinarily qualified. I will say maybe Keisha Lance Bottoms doesn't have necessarily, the federal exposure or experience, but Kamala Harris, Val Demings, these other ladies that are on that short list are extraordinarily well prepared, ready for the job. Kamala, people don't love that she's a prosecutor on the left, but at the same time, that could be like a conjoining element for him to get some of those more moderate people that want to see law and order, since that's Donald Trump's big thing. So even in terms of qualification, in terms of strategy, there makes a lot of sense at this particular point for him to pick any one of these women.
Yeah.
And I'm ready for it. I want to see it.
I know. And since we're on it, my next question, that segues into it. So if I name one of the potential Black women VP, tell me what you like or what you might not like about her. And, we already know she's qualified, so I'm not going to ask that question. So let's start with Val Demings.
I don't think that there's anything that I dislike about Val Demings. I think, I would be very, very pleased to see her be selected. I think she's got a wealth of, obviously, qualifications, a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge she could bring to the table. I think she would be an exemplar, an awesome pick, Black female aside, just in terms of what she could add to the ticket and her preparedness to, as they say, have to leave on day one if something would have happened to Joe Biden. She's there.
And she used to be chief of police in Florida, I believe. Is that right?
What's chief of police? She has some law enforcement in her background as well. I'm not. I think you're saying chief of police, it probably is.
Yeah,
it escapes me.
And I think an attorney as well. She has her background and her credentials are long, so she's definitely not a cosmetic pick. Brittany, what do you think about Val Demings?
I adore her. One, I had the first part of my training be in Florida. Okay. And if I had anything to say about what it means to be a Black woman coming up in politics or in public service in the South, where a lot of what you do is based on how cookie cutter and respectable you are, because you can't, break through that barrier very easily.
Yeah.
And while we see it happen time and time again, what you have to go through once you get in the door to get what you want to get done, the fact that she pushed through all that alone for me was she's gotten a tremendous amount of respect, because we've seen time and time again in Florida where they blatantly ignore the need for gun control, and they blatantly ignore the needs of people. And so to be a progressive and a Democrat, in a region of the country that quite honestly lets us know every day that they care less about, folks of our view, to see her climb the ranks in that climate, anybody who's made it through that for me is at the top of my list always.
Yeah.
And then you add to the fact that she's credentialed, because we have I adore her, for that alone.
Yeah.
I'm with it.
I'm with that too. Let's talk about Kamala Harris. I know we talked about her briefly. So, Kamala Harris, what do you think about her? Is she a good fit, and why?
I think, like I said a little while ago, I think she could be a good pick. Also, the law enforcement background, and she could be. It would be strategic in that she could bring some of those people from the right, maybe, if they want to push the law and order thing, because Donald Trump right now is running a commercial where he's saying Joe Biden wants to defund the police, and if you call 911 in the middle of the night, no one's going to be there, right? So her presence on the ticket could help to combat that. No, we're going to make sure people stay safe, kind of thing, because that's what she did as a prosecutor. But at the same time, some of her history as a prosecutor, people are a little uncomfortable with. Early on in years, she was on the wrong side of some things, and she has a little bit of a, I don't want to say flip flop. When she was running, there were a couple of instances where she wasn't really consistent in what she was saying, and that was a little problematic. But I don't think that any of those things are things that couldn't be overcome with like the proper messaging and a little bit of messaging, really, just how to present herself.
She knows how to raise money, though. I will say that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't dislike her either. I'd be happy. I'd be fine with her too.
Yeah. Brittany, Kamala Harris?
This one is interesting. So, I to be honest, I don't dislike or, disagree with anybody on the list. I think that to Ms. Jackie's point, there's something to be said about messaging and what the perception is around a certain candidate. And we can't act like in our field that messaging and perception is not important. Right. And so it's important that what we do is what we've done and what we do in our life is well communicated in a way where people can understand. I think that it's going to be very hard for anybody in the field of prosecution, particularly when, we live in a system where, African Americans are put in prison at a way higher rate than anybody else. And anybody who contributes to that, although we know, right, whether we feel that people are guilty or not, we know that it is disproportionately, out to challenge our community.
Right.
The justice system, I'm referring to the justice system. And so anybody who takes part in that, or anybody who's dedicated their career, or who is perceived to have dedicated their career to that system, or that, part of our, great American government, right? While the intention may be one way, the perception at this point in time is going to be hard to overcome.
Yeah.
It is. And I think that, we've seen Army folks be elected. We've seen people be crowned as brave because they've been in law enforcement. We've seen people, go out and say, hey, I've been tough on crime. I've done these things. And that rhetoric was the prevailing rhetoric when folks were trying to get rid of crack and cocaine off the streets. But right now, we're starting to look back and say, you know what? We should have taken a second look at how we approach things. We should have, gone a little bit slower and figured out a real way to deal with the actual issues in our communities, not be a part of, just throwing folks away and locking up the key and participating in our criminal justice system. So while, Madam Harris is, qualified, I don't know that she'll be able to overcome that perception of what she chose to do as a career. And I hope that, we see more, from her. I hope that, she continues to push through as she climbs and as she, seeks to reach the level that she desires in public service. But I don't necessarily know that she may be able to overcome that with us and folks deeply, in our blackest communities, right? But she may pull some folks who think, you should just.
And I think the perception that you think that you're talking about partly has something to do why Hillary kind of lost. I mean, maybe not her, but her husband. So people kind of like had that perception about what Bill did back in the 90s, and a lot of people said, okay, we're not going to vote for Hillary for that reason, even though she still ended up winning the popular vote. So you're right about the whole perception thing, and it's not that easy to detach from that when you start running for office, usually. Yeah. Stacey Abrams.
I like Stacey. That's my Spelman sister. She hasn't been at that federal level yet in her career, but I'm like, that's my Spelman sister, so I'm gonna give her a pass, and I would definitely be in favor of that pick.
Yeah.
I think I love her commitment to the integrity of the institution of voting, and people being able to be fairly represented in that process.
Yeah.
She's not really been. I haven't heard her speak to any of our international issues or foreign affairs or anything in that regard. So I know she's an intelligent woman. She doesn't have, like I said, that level of experience because that's not what she's been at in her career. But I'm not gonna.
And she doesn't have a background people can start digging up, like we can dig up with Kamala, right?
Dug up her background. She had some stuff going on with, I think, debt or student loan or something. So the Republicans wanted very badly to hold on to that governorship that she ran for. So they did do some digging on her, and they tried to smear, but it wasn't really anything that anybody should be concerned about, right?
Yeah. Okay. Stacey Abrams, Brittany.
Love her. Absolutely love her. First, I also just want to say that Madam Kamala Harris is also my soror, and so I say all those things in professional love. But I when it comes to Stacey Abrams, I really just can't find anything at all to say. We've seen she's qualified, right? In whatever she does. She speaks well, she presents well. Those are things that we know are right. We already have to do when we come to these settings. So those aren't questions. But on top of it, she's like the process part of it, right? As Jackie talked about. For me, I'm always a fan of candidates in general, whether you are man or woman, black or white, people who are dedicated to the process of government, the process of voting, the process of public service, because it is in fact and indeed that. And she's shown that she's ready to do the work, and she understands policy at a level that is important when you take an office, at such a high level.
Right.
So for me, that's what I value most about her, is that when she has conversations, she's talking about process. And when she talks about a plan or when she talks about a policy, you can see it from start to finish and how it actually might work in translation. And that's something that I think that gets lost a lot of times in the political jargon. Usually you want it to be about the merit of a policy, whether or not your proposed, ideas are going to work.
Yeah.
We've gotten so far because politics and public service and policy has become entertainment, right? And it's become the new cash cow, and advocacy all of a sudden is like you become a celebrity instead of a person that is dedicated to
the cause.
Right, to the cause. And Stacey, to me, has remained true to every facet of what a candidate should look like, even down to how she thinks about government, how she thinks about issues. And, it's for all those reasons that I'm an absolute fan of her.
Yeah. Yeah. So do we have any idea when Biden is going to make this announcement?
I feel like I heard August. And I could be making that up, but I feel like I heard August.
August. Okay. Yeah, that will make sense because election day is fastly approaching. We need to know.
Yeah, we need to know.
And I understand, right? I understand the anxiousness. I think that when you make a decision like that and you have that kind of pressure on you, ultimately, one of the things that, I've said, I serve as one of the, representatives for the campaign, in the county where I am. And, with the vice is, we're at the most pivotal part, in modern history when it comes to presidencies. And not for nothing, you don't want to, that's not a decision that you want to make based on what it looks like. That's not a decision you want to make based on
pressure,
the impression, right? And I think that's where the cosmetics conversation came from. You need to be able to say, and this has been his message, that you want to be able to go to bed at night when you make that decision, knowing that you gave it to the person that you truly in your heart believe can run this country should something happen to you, right? Our candidates are not young.
No,
right? Anything can happen. And, folks are, these are heavy decisions that people have to make. And as a person who is elected now, nowhere near the scale that, Vice President Biden is, or, Mayor Lance Bottoms is, but I am elected. And, even in my little microcosm of a town, you can't, if I've learned nothing else in this seat, is that you have to be very pointed and very deliberate and intentional about the decisions you make, because they affect so many people. And when I go to bed at night, I have to say, I chose this person to sit on my community board because I know that this is the job they're going to carry out. I don't care how many people they know. I don't care what their race. I need to know that this person is going to do that job, and we're going to be able to lean on them to move our folks forward. And I think that Vice President Biden has the same choice to make. And so at this point, folks are writing letters and there's pressure, and we're beating the door down, and we're making videos, and we're letting him know, listen here, we've carried this Democratic vote for a very long time.
Yeah.
Now, you keep playing with us if you want to. We are saying those things, and we're putting that kind of pressure on folks that we haven't seen in a very long while. And so I can see that being pressure coupled with the pressure of, wait, but I have to make sure that I believe as the candidate that this person, when I run with them, that I can get up there and tell the people that they can do this job, and I want to know that they can. And so that's a decision he's going to have to live with. And should he not pick us, he's going to have to live with that. And, should he pick the wrong candidate? If he picks somebody and they're the wrong candidate, he's going to have to live with that too. And so I think we're doing our part, right? And we know what we want.
I think what's also interesting about his pick and really important about who he picks is that he has said that he doesn't intend to run for re-election. So whomever his vice president is, that person is already going to be, if they choose to, the greatest advantage to run for president 4 years from now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
So a black woman, setting a black woman up for that would be, I'd vote for him twice for doing that if I could.
right. And LaShonda says she is enjoying the conversation and she appreciates the honest answers. And we had Amon earlier. She said, "Hello, ladies, well spoken." And Ifua is also saying hello. Yeah. So yeah, this is something that everybody is looking forward to in terms of who he's gonna pick and when. And like you said, it's important that he takes his time doing it. So in terms of policies that we as Black women expect from candidates, what exactly should we be looking for? Or what are you looking for? Maybe that will help somebody else decide what they should be looking for as well.
I know I'm looking for someone who's really ready to take the fight for racial and social justice to the national level, to really undermine some of these systems that remain in place that continue to do our communities disservice and harm. I want to see some of those systems be dismantled. I want it to happen with federal funding. I want it to happen with federal mandates. I want it to happen with national law and resources for more localized municipalities and communities. And I want someone who's going to come into office with a plan that, as Brittany said, is easily absorbed by the people who know what it means for them and how it can be implemented, a plan that will actually work. And that's what I'm looking for. That's my number one. I also want to see my student loan debt canceled, but that's, that's a little selfish.
Okay.
Oh wow. No, I'm serious. No, seriously, that's a thing. Like
It is a thing. Yeah.
let me tell you, if Bernie showed us nothing else, he showed us how much millennials care. Because people in general care about student loan debt.
Oh God, yeah.
Listen, if you're not talking about student loan debt, I can't be bothered. Like I can't even.
Right.
Listen, if that's not something that you like that I know for sure you stand for, I can't even, like, it X's you off the list. I don't care who you are. But I think I'm looking for somebody who is, for me, first of all, I think should any of these women be picked, I think they're already, to be very clear. But I think that I'm looking for somebody to not be status quo. I think I am looking for someone to, regardless to what the issue is, I think people try to say that, environmental justice is not something that we're traditionally into, right? We have plenty of Black women and Black people and people of color who are urbanists, right? And so those are things that we care about. And I think that I'm looking for somebody who's going to take that perspective, because if you stand up for, the least of these, as I'm a Christian and that's what we say, that being people of, minority folks, that means that you're ultimately advancing the agenda of everybody and all people. And so whether you're tackling, environmental justice or climate change, because we know once folks get up there, the issues change.
Yeah.
And the level at which you have to deal with them and think about them is different.
Yeah.
At every level. And so we've seen people be mad at our former, our Obamas for not, quote unquote, addressing our issues. But the thing is that when you address issues of race, you are addressing America, right? There's no way to address America without addressing the issues that we like to scrape under the rug. And so I want to see someone stand up for that. And I want to see Vice President Biden do, regardless of who he picks, be afraid to make that a very top pillar of what he's running on and not be scared of that. I think people, get scared and run away from the important issues because there's this idea that you have to mellow out or you somehow have to water down.
Yeah.
You get to that space. And I want to see somebody be authentically who they are and run the country.
Yeah.
Something that we haven't allowed, Black women or people, minority folks, to do in a very long time. And I think our voter base is tired of the status quo.
That's right.
We need somebody who's going to get in there and not be that.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I'm looking for, regardless to what the issue is.
Yeah, I want to see more issues of gun control being handled.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about enough. I don't like the fact that people can just up and go get guns. Doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see a lot of issues with prison reform being addressed. I also want to see more issues that concern us being brought to the forefront. I know that with the recent protests that we've seen some kind of change, but who knows how much of that is going to continue.
Yeah, economic inequality for me was a top thing too.
Yeah.
If you fix people's trajectory economically in this country, then that knocks out a lot, right?
Yes,
I mean,
that's right.
you know, and we know that, you know, poverty has been disproportionately assigned to people of color.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you can't, again, it's one of those, every issue at every level, you can't talk about it without, you know, putting our issues, minority issues, Black issues at the forefront of it. And we see, you know, every time when we look at the pandemic, when we look at each and every issue, it always has something to do with where you fall on the economic spectrum in the United States. And I think that that's, for me, the main issue, because then there's crime attached to poverty. There's, you know, access to food that's attached to poverty. There's education. There's all these things that are attached to how much you make. I mean, before I graduated grad school, I'm not too far removed from, you know, being on the very, very low end of the middle class, right? Or the poor. And so, you know, to kind of come from that and come from, you know, a background of having low economic status and looking at the difference in opportunities that are given to folks based on where they come from and their economic background, I quite honestly want to see somebody do something major.
Yeah.
You know?
And for any woman out there that wants to get involved with politics, that wants to run for office, what advice would you give them? How would you tell them to go about starting this process?
I would say, if you're in New York, you know, well, anywhere really, look toward the local organizations or the statewide organizations that are explicitly helping women run for office. There are a number of them that are really doing that work, that are intentional about helping women run for office. There's Higher Heights that's dedicated specifically toward that issue around Black women. But there are groups that are doing this work, that they can connect you with trainings, they can connect you with potential staff. So I would say start there. There are resources out there. It's daunting, but I would definitely say, if you're thinking about it, think about it for real and don't talk yourself out of it. Like, don't let yourself be the one who says, oh, I can't do this. This isn't for me. I'm not qualified, or I'm scared, or whatever the case may be. But be intentional about doing that research and seeing what resources are out there that can get you with your foot in the first door, or at least your foot in front of your other foot, so that you know exactly what it is that you should be doing first.
Right.
What about people that have a concern that raising money might be an issue? No,
it's a concern. It is, but you know, don't let it stop you.
Well, it's a concern. It's a concern, but it should not.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
It should
a concern,
not.
But not a deterrent.
Right. So I'm going to be extremely transparent because it's important for us to do that. So Emily's list, in New Jersey, we have emerged. I have some friends who've gone through the class for women who want to run for office. The thing is that there are those of us who decide that we're going to do it, and then there are those of us who are encouraged to do it, or asked to do it. And a mentor of mine said to me, the best people who are in office are the people who are asked and approached to run. I happen to be one of those people. And a good friend of mine, Medina Muhammad, who is the chief of staff here in our state assembly, and she's amazing. She talked to us. She came back and she shared us, a fact with us that she learned in her class, in her merge class regarding, women where a man has to be asked maybe once or twice, whereas a woman has to be asked like 5 or 6 times. And that just speaks to, and that's really anything that we do. We have this, I don't know what society has done to us that made us second guess who we are and second guess naturally our place, in leadership. And a lot of us go through that. And I think if you're struggling with the decision on whether or not to run, and you haven't taken a step back to look at who you are and what it might mean for you to be in that space, if you're not doing that, I question your humanity. You should, right? Because everything is about it. Sometimes it moves from, particularly when you're a woman and a Black woman, it moves from what you want to do to who you are, from what you wear to how you dress to how you look, how you speak. And so you have to search yourself to figure out your why. And the answers to your why are really about the people, are really about doing the work and not about advancing yourself. And you really want to give 100% to that office that you're in. Not, I want to give 100% for a little bit so I can run for this and then become that and then do this. You have to give 100% of whatever it is you're about to go into.
Yeah, no matter how long it takes.
Because it's going to demand 100% and then some from you, regardless of whether it's compensated or not.
Yeah.
There's no amount of money that is going to suffice for the amount of personal sacrifices you make, the amount of sleep that you lose doing this job. And so you have to be dedicated. There can't be any room for wavering once you make this decision, because you carry the weight of the people you represent. And so my advice to any woman who wants to run is know that you are worthy. And if somebody approaches you and encourages you to do that, it's because they're watching the work that you're doing, and you should feel honored about that. And you, the people who are looking to you represent them, a disservice by giving yourself that opportunity. Because you are looking for, you just might be a thing that folks don't see.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you powerful. It doesn't make any of the things that people try to attach to you when you put yourself up for that kind of service. Because to be clear, there are going to be plenty of nights you're not going to sleep. There are going to be plenty of times where you have to make a hard decision. There are going to be plenty of boring meetings that you have to stay at past 5 o'clock. Right, when it's not cute. There are going to be so many sacrifices that you make that you do have to search yourself and figure out your why. But don't let any of these things deter you, because trust and believe men, whether they are qualified or not, are more likely to step into a position that they believe they deserve.
Right. Trump.
And that literally is the difference between them and us.
Yeah.
So do it.
Right.
Do it.
Right. Right.
That's how I feel. That's it.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's a great nugget to take away. Like, just if you have the courage to do it, just step up and go for it. Because there's a need for more of us in office. There really is, and we need to really be the change. Like Brittany likes hashtagging. We need to be the voice out there for the people, and the more young kids see people that look like them, women that look like them, the more they feel encouraged to. So that makes a huge difference.
And shout out to the people who encourage us to do that. Shout out to the people who call and say to those Democratic chairmen, or particularly mine, right, or those mayors, or the people who serve on the community board with you and that approach you and say, hey, we need to see somebody like you represent us. Why don't you? I'll support you. Shout out to both people, because it's not something we naturally wake up and think about. And so
that's true.
To people who see us before we see us,
people who believe in you. That makes a difference. Yeah. So before we wrap up, I want to again thank you so much for taking the time out. I mean, these are conversations that I think we need to keep having. These are conversations that people want to hear about, and we don't talk about enough. So thank you so much for taking the time out. I had to hunt both of you down. I kept checking my emails. Oh, did I get it? Did I get it? So thank you so much. So
Yeah.
viewers, I want to follow you. Please, follow your work, website, social media, all of that. The floor is yours.
I'm on Twitter at Jackie Bur. I'm sorry, Brittany. You want to go ahead? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. On Twitter at Jackie Burbridge and on Facebook at Jackie Duodu Burbridge, which is how you have it without the hyphen, but Jackie Duodu Burbridge on Facebook.
Okay. And Brittany?
I'm on Facebook as Brittany D. Claybrooks. I'm on Instagram as Brittany Claybrooks _, and I'm on Twitter as Claybrooks. Nothing real fancy, just my name's on all of them. I still have the same pages that I had. You know, I didn't change anything. Kept it the same.
Since you've been in office, you haven't been coming on social media as much.
Yeah, when you're right, you want more time. Like you spend more time thinking about these things and doing these things and then sharing the that you did or how you came out on the other side than, posting your ideas about things. It's strange.
It does. Yeah, I get it.
But it's actually attributed to time as a more limited resource than it has the desire to post or just changing whatever my image was. I think it's more time being a more limited resource.
I think it's a time thing too. You're still the same. I don't think you've really changed who you are since. So
No, I don't plan to.
Thank you so much again, ladies. For everybody that tuned in to watch, I appreciate you watching. This is gonna live on YouTube. The News with Obi is also gonna live on Facebook as well. If you want to do a replay of it, and if you know how to reach these ladies, their social media handles. They've talked about that. So please, stay in touch. Go out and vote November 3rd. If you're not registered, there's still time to register to vote. Please, your vote matters. And it's all hands on deck this time around. Please, you guys, please.
Yes, please vote.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Obi.
Bye.